Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to round 3 of the 2018 World Debating Championship in Ireland. Please turn off your mobile phones and thank you. The motion for this round reads, this House regrets the widespread belief that motherhood is a rewarding experience. Debating this round are Team Mexico, who are proposing, as well as Team Latvia, who are opposing. Please welcome all the speakers. The adjudicators for this round are Jure from Slovenia, Alex from Qatar, and Cameron Wiley from Scotland. Please welcome.
Quickly want to clarify, our position is Lithuania.
Lithuania?
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry. Each speaker has 8 minutes to deliver their speech. The end of the speech will be marked by double knock. The first and the 7th minute are protected from points of information and will be marked by 1 knock. The first or the second speaker of each side will deliver a 4-minute reply speech for their side. There are no points of information during reply speeches. I now invite the first speaker for side proposition.
Women have for centuries been oppressed by a dictatorship called no choice. And because of that, we so proudly propose a motion this House regrets the widespread belief that motherhood is a rewarding experience. In my speech, I'll present to you my first argument, coercion is not choice, and the second one, that of heightened heteronormativity. But before I do so, let me address the framework for this debate. Our stance in this debate is that we regret any narrative that imposes a lifestyle as a rewarding or a better lifestyle. We also tell you that media, culture, and tradition has told women that the reason why they should be rewarded for being a mother are two. The first one, that there's an intrinsic happiness in being a mother, meaning that if you're a mother, you've basically fulfilled your role as a woman. The second one is that of telling people that if they have children in the future, their children will sustain them. We regret that. No, thank you. But now onto the burden. Team Proposition will prove to you in this debate that the widespread belief has harmed and prevented prevented gender equality from happening. But now, with that clarified, I would like to move on to my first argument, that of coercion is not choice. Here's where we tell you that this narrative has historically functioned as a way of coercing women to make choices that they wouldn't have done either way. We tell you this has been done mainly through religion, where you have people and ideas like the Virgin Mary as the people you were looking up to, right? And the people that you should be like in the future. We tell you that the narrative that imposes every child as a miracle becomes detrimental for many people. The first type of people, all of them, no thank you, but first of all of them women. The first one is those women that are infertile by nature. These women that are told and shamed because they cannot have children. We tell you we regret the idea of making them feel less valuable than any other woman. The second type of women that we think this harms is the women that decide simply not to have children. We tell you that this is a very valid choice, and in the moment where you make this narrative and when you make people feel proud of being a mother, you instantly make those that do not want to be a mother feel as less. But lastly, we tell you the women that decide to have an abortion, right? The women that, because they were maybe sexually assaulted and not even going as far as being sexually assaulted, teenage pregnancies, or women that did not want to have a child, we tell you that every time in most of the nations, they are shamed because of their decision. Yes, madam.
Regardless of how motherhood is perceived as diverse, a rewarding or not rewarding experience, one will be still pressured to have these babies because we're the only ones in the society who can do that. It will still be pressured, but now we believe that we are making a terrible decision because motherhood is so terrible on your side.
I understand your point, ma'am. However, the point that the pressure you're talking about comes from a societal level. The society that's telling people, and women especially, that they should have children and that is the role of the society. We don't understand what pressure you're talking about. However, what we do tell you is that when they say that this pressure would exist in any other way, we tell you that in our side it doesn't, because we're not against motherhood itself, but we're against imposing a better lifestyle, imposing the idea that motherhood is what women should look up to, right? But furthermore, we tell you that this ultimately ends up degrading the value of women that decide not to have children, because at the end, because they're portraying every child as a miracle, they're portraying these women as unable to fulfill the miracle itself. We tell you that they are putting the reproduction ability of these women beyond and above the individuality of them. They're telling them that the reproductive ability that they have by nature is more important than what they want to do and what they decide to do. Second line of analysis for this argument is that of sexual liberation. What we tell you is that there is a great stigma against women that decide to be sexually promiscuous or active, because what happens is that on the status quo, and even more in a historical level, women are ashamed for being sexually active if it is not with the purpose of having a child. We tell you that while men are not ashamed by doing this, we tell you that this is a harm they have to respond to. The last thing we want to say in this argument is the idea of how this also limits the careers of women, right? Women that decide to take a path towards the education or a career, they're constantly detrimented because there is a belief ingrained that they will eventually leave the work to have a child, that even furthers the gender pay gap, that makes women gain less. We tell you that historically the narrative has led to a lot of inequality and has led to inequality to be seen as a norm. No, thank you. What we tell you is that this narrative promotes the idea that the greatest achievement that a woman can have is being a mother. This not only is detrimental in the sense that it diminishes other achievements. We tell you that, for example, Lady Macbeth, Shakespeare wanted to portray pure evil, and the way he did it was by portraying a woman that decided not to have a child. We tell you that in the moment where they're prioritizing motherhood over other things, they're diminishing the accomplishment of other women by saying, well, she accomplished this, but she wasn't a mother. At the end, we tell you that because women people are different, we shouldn't be establishing a certain lifestyle that everyone should follow. On to my second argument, that of heightened heteronormativity. What we tell you is that this policy and narrative promotes heteronormativity and hurts the LGBTQ plus community and also non-traditional families. How? By heteronormativity, we mean relationships that are straight or provide men as the ones that should provide the bread and the money to the household. What we mean is, first of all, it harms the LGBTQ plus community in the sense that lesbians are portrayed as women that aren't fully women because they cannot achieve what women are supposed to do. Gay men will always be lacking the key component for parenthood. And here's where we want to stress out that motherhood is not the same as parenthood, right? Motherhood only applies to women. Furthermore, we tell you that trans women will always be diminished because they are seen as if they were giving up a miracle, and trans men, and the other way around, and trans women will never be fully women because they cannot have this miracle. Lastly, we talk about non-traditional families by telling you that stay-home dads or single fathers can never achieve what a mother would be able to do. We tell you that this only perpetuating the gender roles in society is very detrimental, not only for women, but also for men. At the end, we tell you that we regret any sort of narrative that alienates women, but also the minorities and the most vulnerable groups in our society. At the end, judges, it is your choice whether to continue this narrative or ideologically oppose to what has been oppressing women.
Speaking time was 8 minutes and 11 seconds. I would like to thank the first speaker of the proposition for their speech, and would like to invite the first speaker of the opposition to the word.
That can give birth in our society. However, we believe that giving birth will happen on both sides of the house. However, we believe that having a positive narrative about being a mother will always empower women more. We believe that this debate is about on which side do women have more choice over their lifestyle. We believe that the kind of narrative that we have, which is a positive one about being a mother, not only gives women more choice about their lifestyle, but also empowers women to take this choice and to be happy with it. Very proud to propose. On our side, we're going to have 3 arguments for each debate. Firstly, I'll talk about how generally we believe that motherhood is a rewarding thing and that kind of a narrative positively influences women. Secondly, I'll talk about how there's generally more benefits in the society for women when we have this narrative. And then we'll talk about the effects of children of both of these narratives. But before that, I have some rebuttal on what we've heard from the side of the opposition. So the first argument is about how there's generally right now a coercion to have birth, and a lot of people are detrimental. Look, we believe that we have to, thank you, compare here. Which kind of women do we have more in our society? We believe that we have more of those women who actually want to have children. Because I'm further going to explain in my first argument, how generally we believe that women in most cases want to have children, and generally that motherhood is a rewarding thing. No, thank you. But we believe that even with these career-oriented women that exist, we believe that their side is going to be detrimenting the women that actually want to have children way more. And we believe that the kind of narrative that we have on our side is way easier to resist than their narrative. Because under our side, we believe that even if you believe that motherhood is not a rewarding thing for you, you can choose another reward that you can have in your life. Well, on their side, we believe that women are simply discouraged and scared of the kind of effects that motherhood is going to have on them. Because look, it's not about whether it's good to have children, thank you, or not. You have to compare here what kind of an experience is motherhood going to be. Is it going to be a positive one, or are they going to basically focus on these short-term harms, like for example, sleepless nights, or I don't know, an opportunity cost of your career, right? Secondly, we hear from them that there's generally pressure, and that this kind of pressure will no longer exist on their side. Look, we believe, thank you, this pressure is still going to be on their side. Because we live in a patriarchal society where there's generally pressure for you as a woman to have a duty of actually having children, right? We believe that this is going to happen on both sides of the house. However, we believe that when you actually perceive motherhood to be rewarding, it is way better for you as a woman psychologically, because you actually look at this experience as something positive that you're going to have, that is going to be a great part of your life. When it's not rewarding, it's simply perceived as duty that you have to the society. We believe that women are going to be detrimented psychologically. Then they tell us that there's going to be a pay gap. Look, we believe that under there, so there's going to be not only greater pay gap, but also no employment benefits for these women. Because we see that when employers will perceive that motherhood is generally not a positive experience, right? They'll basically blame these women for wanting to be mothers and for wanting to go on maternity leave. Therefore, these employment benefits will not exist on their side. But then their second point, I'll take in a moment, is about heteronormativity. Look, we also stand for LGBT families having children, right? However, we believe that this narrative is generally not just about motherhood, but generally about having children in general, right? We believe that these families are also going to be detrimented and is also going to be seen as a bad experience for them, right? As having children is simply a burden and these short-term harms actually override the long-term benefits. Before moving on to our first argument, go.
In the developing world, in nations such as Mexico or Nigeria, this narrative of motherhood being rewarding is what actually leads many women that live in poverty to have children. Do you think it's sometimes not regrettable if they have many children in extreme poverty?
Look, the comparative here is that these women on your side are also going to have children. However, they're going to see this experience as a bad one. They're going to actually hate being mothers. We believe that it's way better when you actually accept that having a child as a good thing, right? And you actually see it as a long-term benefit for yourself. We believe that on our side, mothers are way better off psychologically. Our first point is about the psychological effects. So we believe that human beings in general want to leave a legacy, right? They want to have offspring. We believe that it's inherent nature to actually prefer being in a community and having people close to you and having a family, right? And we believe that it just so happens that women and not men are the ones who actually have to give birth, right? No, we believe that the fact that people actually want to have a legacy and want to have a community will always lead to women having kids. However, we see that motherhood can actually be fulfilling in a variety of ways. We see that humans are actually emotional beings. Therefore, firstly, when you have children, we believe that you can actually explore many things about yourself that you have not known before. Secondly, we believe that you actually have something to cherish, right? Because you actually have like somebody to be responsible for, somebody to take care of. We believe that these kind of things bring actually very great feelings to humans, right? But thirdly, we believe that mothers actually expect children later on to take care of them. And we believe that what you expect people actually look at these long-term rewards, right? As you do not want to be alone, no thank you, when you're old, right? We believe that all of this means that motherhood can actually be very fulfilling and actually bring a lot of positive energy into your life. And we believe that under the status quo, these specifically are the things that are actually the current narrative and that are actually emphasized about motherhood, right? And we believe that in most cases this is actually the truth, right? We believe that mothers find a lot of the good things about being a mother and about having children. However, we believe that it's going to change when we introduce, and thank you, this negative narrative. We believe that the emphasis will actually be put on the harshness of being a mother, right? Having sleepless nights, it actually being very expensive to take care of a child, there actually being an opportunity cost of sacrificing your career. And note that these are actually very short-term harms that these mothers have, because we believe that all these benefits that we have talked about are actually the long-term experiences that mothers have that actually bring, no thank you, way greater benefits. So on their side, we believe that there are going to be two scenarios. First, we believe that some women will simply be deterred from having children because of this negative narrative. And therefore, they will not have children because they will be scared even if they want to. And therefore, we believe that they will be deterred by these crimes, and generally, they're actually likely to regret this kind of decision. Because notice that people are very short-sighted. If this narrative is first, they're going to look at these short-term harms more than actually the long-term ones of having a family and having somebody that will take care of them. But secondly, we believe that it's more likely that women will still be giving birth, right? No, thank you. However, it will be perceived as a duty, right? Therefore, these mothers will actually be expected to be very horrible to be a mother, right? All these harms are going to be emphasized to such a greater extent, right? Therefore, it will be so much harder for these women to actually go through these hardships, no thank you, and to actually and to actually take care of those children, right? We believe that it is way better, even if these harms exist, to have a positive narrative about being a mother and to emphasize the long-term benefits. But our status quo. We see that in a patriarchal society, a lot of women are pushed to actually compromise between having a career and working and having a family. We believe that this is a double pressure where you actually have to work and take care of the household, right? And this is generally very hard, right? We believe that this will exist on both sides. However, we believe that under our side, when women are actually appreciated for their effort, they actually see this duty as being very rewarding, right? And for their efforts actually being totally worth it, compromising your career and compromising a family. However, we believe that this changes on their side because firstly, society doesn't perceive motherhood as being rewarding, right? Meaning that they actually blame you for having so much to do and so much problems, right? Because you're the one that chose to have a family and a career. You're the one that chose to actually have a child. But secondly, we believe that states will also not recognize these motherhood as being rewarding, right? Therefore, they won't prioritize women. So we will have generally less benefits such as maternity leave or like general better conditions for mothers. We believe that employers will also undertake this too, as they will be blaming women that they actually want to have this experience, right? We believe that we have these benefits on our side because we generally empower a greater amount of women. Very proud to them.
Speaking time was 8 minutes, 25 seconds. I would like to thank the first speaker of the opposition for their speech, and would like to invite the second speaker of the proposition to deliver her speech.
A narrative that has locked women away from our culture, from our academia, from our government, is a narrative that we absolutely must regret. And for this, I am very proud to propose this motion. 3 things I will be doing for you as the second speaker of the proposition team. I will rebut everything the opposition team has said so far. We'll go on to strengthen our own case, and we'll give our own third argument, that of the harm of children. First, on the rebuttal. First of all, I would like to highlight that the opposition completely mischaracterizes the proposition's burden and our own case. Our first speaker told you very clearly that what we stand for is not promoting any type of career over another or any type of lifestyle over another. We regret a historical narrative that has kept women away from a vast amount of career opportunities. It is not our job to push a narrative that says that says motherhood is a negative thing. We believe any type of role a woman wants to take should be equally respected. Historically, that hasn't been the case. The opposition needs to understand what they're actually fighting for. No, thank you. Now, on to their actual construction. They told us in our first argument that being a mother can be very rewarding because of the emotional, great things a child can give you, because it can give them large opportunities, and that what we are doing is given short-term harms. I really can't rebut much to this because we never told you that we're going to be pushing a negative narrative for women involved. But beyond that, in the developing world, there is no opportunity for these women to be having jobs in the first place, and this current narrative stands strongly for them. They are deeply harmed and deeply denigrated, as this is seen as their sole opportunity. The entirety of their case, but beyond the fact that it really doesn't make any sense in regards to what we're actually pushing for, only really works for the most privileged women in our society. Those that actually have the opportunity of choice that doesn't exist for the vast majority of women in the world, precisely because of a narrative that has pushed them away. No thank you. On their second argument, that of benefits, they told you that if we try to establish this narrative, we are going to actually be harming them in the long term, because women will see their children as something negative, and they will simply see the short-term harms beyond the long-term things. Again, we never said we're going to be pushing a negative narrative, but beyond that, we would like to highlight that the narrative that they stress, the fact that women are seen as having an intrinsic duty to children, the fact that women have a pay gap, the fact that women are seen as irresponsible and devalued if they don't take care of their children and their mothers, is something that has been pushed by that same narrative. When they tell us that this is going to be happening anyway because of a biological desire to have kids, what we ask you is, then why isn't this pushed for men if men are the only people that can actually impregnate women, right? What we say is that this has specifically harmed women in the fact that motherhood has consistently been pushed as the sole thing that makes women powerful because children are seen as a miracle. Motherhood is seen as a miracle. All the harms they talk about on their side in a non-existent model that we never provided actually exist solely because of the narrative that they are supposed to defend. They solely exist because historically the patriarchy has told women that if they don't do this, that if they don't value motherhood above everything else, they have no value as people. Yes?
But regretting the narrative that motherhood is rewarding means that you have to focus on the fact that motherhood is not rewarding and there are certain harms that are brought with it.
What we are saying is that a widespread narrative that motherhood is rewarding is a narrative that has also told women that they should place motherhood above all other things. To say motherhood is rewarding is to say that they should highlight on that rather than on, say, their careers, on their personal life, on their potential integration of culture. That is what we are defending. We are saying that women have the right to choose what is rewarding for them and that motherhood isn't the option for all women involved. Back to our own case. First argument, they told you that, oh, but actually the comparative here is that women are solely going to focus on the short-term harms. No, thank you. This is a complete misunderstanding of what we told you in this argument. We told you, rather, that historically this choice hasn't existed because it has been coerced upon them. It has been coerced upon women that simply want to abort a child, whether this be because of sexual assault, teenage pregnancy, or simply because they didn't feel like that was the right choice for them at the time. It has been forced upon women who see career paths as the best option for them, and historically has blocked them from being able to take these career paths in the first place. Lady Macbeth characterized as pure evil solely because of the fact she didn't focus on motherhood. That is what the historical narrative has pushed upon us, telling women that if you do not take this choice, you are worth nothing at all. All the harms they propagate on their side come precisely because of this, and that is what they have to defend. A narrative that has led to women being unable to do anything besides motherhood, have this as the sole, most rewarding experience in our lives. Judges, when the Virgin Mary, the most powerful female image in religion, is there solely because her child was a miracle, because her pregnancy was a miracle. We see a society that comes to see children, comes to see motherhood as something that should be upheld above all else and creating equality for all. No, thank you. On our second argument that I've highlighted heteronormativity. We told you, and they really decided to ignore the vast majority of this, simply saying that, oh, but motherhood actually applies for all. We also support LGBT communities. But historically, this narrative has pushed these communities away. It has told lesbians that they're giving up an intrinsic duty. It has told gay men they will never be as good fathers as straight men. It has told single fathers they're missing women. It has told trans women they will never be women. It has told trans men they're giving up a miracle by transitioning. It has kept aside and pushed away the most vulnerable actors in our society. That is a narrative we regret, judges. And for them to say that, oh, we support these communities too, is to ignore millennia of historical oppression that you must take into account. Back at our construction. Third argument that took the harm of children. Here we tell you that this narrative has actually deeply harmed the children involved. Why? 108,000 Black Americans have had abortions, while 133,000 white Americans have had abortions. These numbers are fairly similar. What is important to point out here is that there are 5 times as many white Americans in society than there are Black Americans. What does this mean? That generally, the people who are having the most children, the people who are being the most harmed, are those at the very bottom. That you are exacerbating a poverty cycle by telling women that what you are doing is something that you must fulfill, that your duty as a woman is motherhood. You are hurting them because these people in the most vulnerable sectors of society come to see children as they themselves conceive as something that will eventually fulfill their own benefits, that will give them practical benefits by taking care of them. What this leads to is these sections of society who generally have less access to protected sex, who are generally more coerced into these roles, into having children, a large amount of them, and eventually being unable to provide for them. And being unable to provide for these children exacerbates a cycle where these children are poor, where these children are hurt, where they do not understand what to do. You get rid of resources and you harm those who are already being harmed, precisely because women are told the only way to escape poverty is not by seeking other choices, but to become a mother and have children, particularly in the developing world where these agents are most hurt. But we also tell you that this further promotes a narrative where adopted children are seen as lesser than biological children. Because motherhood has historically been seen as something of biology. We see how there are millions of adopted children left behind and not seen as good enough because they aren't fulfilling the miracle of childbirth, the miracle that makes motherhood so great. So you put a further value on biology, which degrades their own value as children, degrades the fact that they don't have mothers, and degrades their own societal purpose, which actually leads for those in developing countries to feel ashamed of themselves and be more likely to seek alternatives, such as back-only abortions, and such as other ways to hide the secret. Judges, this narrative has led to women being deeply oppressed, being deeply kept away from our society, and for the most vulnerable actors involved to be historically pushed away. That is what they have to defend, judges, and it is absolutely irresponsible for them to not do so. Thank you.
Speaking time was 8 minutes, 13 seconds. I would like to thank the second speaker of the proposition for their speech and would like to invite the second speaker of the opposition to deliver their speech.
Dear panel, notice how team our proposition refuses to engage with a comparative of this debate. We tell you that women on both sides of the house will be forced to have children because they're the only ones who can do that, and we generally see that human beings as a species will always want to actually have the offspring. This does not change on both sides of the house. But when you tell what changes is how this experience is perceived. And if you tell them that you change the narrative, that it's not rewarding, so we ask you, what is that? Then you tell everyone that motherhood is not rewarding. We tell you that you see no inherent value in motherhood. You undermine all the suffering all the burdens that these women have to take care of. So we tell you the comparative of this debate is between this motherhood being perceived as rewarding or as a terrible experience. And we believe that women, that if they are perceived as a rewarding experience, we believe women are better off on our side of the house. Very proud to oppose. So today in my speech, I'll do two things. First of all, I have 3 points of rebuttal, and then I will move on to a further argument of team opposition. They'll talk what is the effect on children on our side of the house. But before that, rebuttal. So one woman will still have the incentive to have children on both sides of the house. And notice how we provided you 2 mechanisms that was never responded on side proposition. Firstly, we told you that people generally want to have children, and the majority of women just want to have children because we tell them it's a biological thing. We tell them that women just want to have to leave legacy after them. We want to have someone to care after them and they become old. We tell them that people generally don't want to be lonely. This is the reason why they have children. It's not only the narrative, and they never engage with us on that measure. But secondly, we told you that this will always stay the perception that having a child is a duty, because the humanity wants to prevail. And we tell you that women will be actually encouraged to have children on both sides of the house. And we tell you that since, unfortunately, women are the only ones who can do that, we will be the ones pressured into this situation. So this clearly proves you why women will be having children on both sides of the house. But the clear distinction here comes is then this experience is not perceived as rewarding, meaning that the perception is changed. Meaning that the society now perceives that there is no good thing that you are having a child. There is no reward that you are doing this. There are only bad things. They tell you that the society will now undermine the motherhood in general, and they tell you this is extremely bad. They tell you that most women want to have babies. And we tell you that we can see this from the things that women actually try to combine working and having babies. We tell you that the majority of society wants to have babies. And since we never engage with our mechanism, this is still status. So we tell you that the narrative has changed, and the society perceives this as a not rewarding thing, and not good thing at all. We tell you that society will blame women for having these children. Because we will tell you But okay, now state will have an opportunity to tell you, okay, okay, if you're having a baby, that is not a rewarding experience. There is no inherent value in you being a mother. We tell you that we don't have to give you maternity benefits. We don't have to give you child welfare benefits. We tell you this is extremely detrimental. We tell you that employees, but generally, yes, are skeptical about giving women a maternity leave. But now, if we also perceive this experience as a rewarding experience, these employers are more likely to give women a maternity leave or more flexible working hours, because we believe that this is a rewarding experience to have a baby, and this is actually a good experience that these women are having. So we tell you this is particularly important for middle class women, or for a single woman, if they want single mothers, if they want to talk about it. We tell you that most women and who are mothers need this support from the state, need this support from their employers. We also need to see that their hurdles of being a woman are recognized. And this will be detrimental on their side of the house. Because I tell you that if you don't emphasize there is a reward of being a mother, but it's not a good thing, these agents will lose the incentive to actually provide these exclusive benefits to the mothers. And they will be detrimental to the women who are the most vulnerable. We tell you that these are women who are mothers, but also have two jobs. These women have a hard time to sustain themselves, and they are leaving these women alone. So if you're going to talk about female empowerment, you need to engage how this will affect this middle-class woman who will lose these benefits from the police and from the state. Moving on to the second point. Which pressure is easier to resist? We tell you that then we have a narrative, and this experience is rewarding. We tell you that yes, this narrative sometimes pressures women into having children. But we tell you this narrative will be still better than the counter narrative that will be negative. So we tell you that if you see this as a rewarding experience, we tell you, okay, now society tells us this is a rewarding experience. But if I personally believe that it will be for me more rewarding to have a great career, probably you will choose another positive thing. Because it's easier for you to reject one positive thing and choose another positive point. But then this experience will be perceived as a negative thing. When women who actually want to have children will be deterred and tell you, don't have a child because child will be expensive, child will detriment your life, and there is no benefit in having a child. We tell you, we will be deterred, and we will be actually not deterred from having these children. Because we will see no other positive alternative. We will just see the threat of having a child. So we tell you that pressure on our side, I'll take it in a second. Pressure on our side of the house will be actually better because women will be able to resist it more likely. Go.
Do you believe that it is more rewarding for a woman to have babies than to have a career?
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the mischaracterization they want to push us in. They don't tell you that women only have to be housewives. They don't tell you that women only have to be mothers. They tell you that we encourage women to be mothers, to have the children and see this as a rewarding experience, but also have a job. And we enable this on our side of the house, and the whole society perceives this as a rewarding experience. We never explain us the link why only changing the narrative will prevent women from actually entering the workforce. We believe we have this on our side as well. But simply talking about infertile single mothers, we tell you this will never change on their side as well. Because when people have inherently this mechanism, they want to have children, it will still be pressured, so this won't change this. About adopted children, we believe that adopted children in our side of the house will be much better because now it won't be at least perceived as a burden, and more people have inherent value in being mothers, so we will be actually more adopted children on our side of the house, so we are point completely false. Moving on to the effect on child, and this is a third point of team opposition. So when we perceive having children as a rewarding experience, we believe that mothers take care of their children more and better. We see this as good experiences. We see because the narrative that the long-term benefits of having a child are much bigger than short-term benefits, short-term harms. So we tell that parents are more invested in their children. They actually interested in children's extracurriculum curriculum activities. In extreme cases, parents are not even that inclined to abandon their children in the case when they feel it's unwanted, because the general narrative that having a child is rewarding and you will actually receive these benefits in the long term. But then we change the narrative. Parents neglect their children more because we tell you that they're not given a reason to actually invest in a child and take care of him in the short term, but sometimes the situations are difficult. We don't handle well the short-term harms. For example, a toddler is constantly crying, and you as a mother, if you don't believe this experience is rewarding, you're probably more likely to abandon this child. but most importantly, child perceives himself as a burden. Because now society tells you, but okay, having a child is not very rewarding, so what is it then? Then it's a burden that women just chooses themselves. We tell you this is a terrible narrative and women will be detrimented. So ladies and gentlemen, because children we were born on both sides of the house, but in our side of the house, women are appreciated for that. We provide better life for women. Very proud to our fathers.
Speaking time was 8 minutes, 21 seconds. I would like to thank the second speaker of the opposition for their speech and would like to invite the third speaker of the proposition to deliver their speech.
Judges, we live in a world that is divided. Even though Celeste and I, we wake up around the same time, we put on similar clothes, we go to the same place to study, the expectations that we have imposed by society are different. Why? Because throughout history, society has imposed this idea that the most rewarding thing a woman can do is have children. And that is why if I decide not to have children, I will not be looked upon as the same way as Celeste. And we tell you that that is worth regretting. Practical rules. 3 questions in today's debate. Firstly, we're going to ask, does motherhood help all women? Secondly, we're going to ask, who is and under which side do we damage more women? And thirdly, is it better in general for society? But before we go into a point of clash, let's highlight the biggest mistakes that we find in the side of the opposition, right? And it's that they stand up here and they tell us, well, we do not regret telling people that motherhood is it brings rewards, because we can show them that there are other rewards in life. What we stand for the proposition is very clear. It's a systematic system which has shown that motherhood should be rewarded upon every single else. A system which tells women that the most important thing and the biggest reward that they will get, no thank you, is that of motherhood. That is what we have to regret, because that is the historic oppression that has existed. With that being said, let's go to the first question. Does motherhood help all women? Now, ladies and gentlemen, let's just analyze how the side of the opposition has characterized this whole debate. Because they stand up and they tell us, well, there are some great benefits to motherhood. Like, some women actually want it. And we do not disagree with that. We're not saying that motherhood is necessarily bad. But what we tell you is that the way in which motherhood is imposed to women in general is what is worth regretting. Even if they stand up and they tell us, well, in their third argument, they tell us, well, now people have an incentive to protect their children because you send a narrative that motherhood is rewardable, right? Then they tell us women will be stressed if you do not have this narrative. Look, what they're basically telling us, it's necessary for us, society, to tell women that having children is rewardable. No, thank you. We think that women can actually decide for themselves whether or not having children will actually bring benefits or rewards into their life. We reject that narrative. But most importantly, they tell us, well, it's an incentive to have children. They're conceding to this whole idea that the narrative that has been perpetuated for centuries, even millennia, has been incentivizing women to have children. It's being coerced. What we tell you that under our side, we do not think that one simple ideology should be imposed to all women. We tell you that it's not one lifestyle that brings more rewards to another, and that is something worth regretting. No, thank you. We tell you that in other cases, we should not be imposing these beliefs because it ultimately damages our society. So does motherhood damage women? The truth is that motherhood by itself does not damage women. But when you tell them that it will bring the biggest rewards out there, that is precisely when you're starting to damage that group. With that being said, let's go to the second question, who damages more women. But before I go into that, yes.
If you perceive motherhood as not rewarding, then you don't recognize the sacrifices of motherhood and the inherent value in it. So can you please explain to me why states and employers will still give women concessions and will still empower women who are working?
I think I understand your point, and this is precisely what I'll address in my second argument. In my second question, who damages more women? Now, the whole argument is this idea, if we accept that having children is something horrible, then therefore the government will give more maternity leave. They'll give more options to women. No, we tell you that the only reason as to why we have those things is because as a society, we're starting to understand that there are other things that are equally important to having children, right? We're telling you that as a society, we're having the shift in which we acknowledge that having careers is not necessarily better or worse to having children, but equal. Because under their side of the house, which they tell us that motherhood should be seen as this ultimate benefit which brings the most rewards, we think that under their side, that there is no incentive to give all of these things, because women should only be focusing on having children. Women should only be focusing on having mothers. And that is precisely what we analyzed in our first argument, which we told, look, the fact that you tell women that the way in which they get the most rewards is through motherhood is problematic because you're actively alienating them from other things. They're choosing to drop out of school. They're choosing not to follow their dreams because in our society, they do not think that they will get as many rewards from these things. Why is this problematic? Not only do you have a sector of society which feels trapped into doing certain things, but most importantly, you're perpetuating this idea that women have a duty, that women should only be doing the certain things that actually reward them. No, thank you. Now, with that being said, let's go to the third question, which is it better for society in general? Now, the set of the opposition stood up and the third argument they told us, well, you know what? Children, if you do not have this narrative, they'll feel like objects. They'll feel like burdens to their parents. We think that this is not true. We think that even if we do not have this narrative, parents will still treat their children with kindness. We do not think that's really inclusive under their set of teachers. But what is really important, and what is it that we talk to you in our third argument, which is very important for this debate, and was completely untouched by the side of the opposition? We think that it is sometimes problematic to follow this narrative because women that are in certain situations are incentivized to have children, even though it may not be convenient for them or for the children that they're bringing into this world. We told you how in many cases poverty is perpetuated by people deciding to have children in situations in which they could have better alternatives. We think that this is ultimately extremely problematic. But most importantly, we also refer to you about certain groups of society that are not able to have children in the same way as these mothers are. We tell you about homosexual couples. We tell you about women that are infertile. We tell you if you promote this narrative, you're diminishing the value that these people may have. You're diminishing the rewards they may have with their adopted children. You're diminishing the bond that exists in our society. You're ultimately damaging these people. But most importantly, we think that it's actually under their side in which people and children are burdened. Because what you're saying is, you, child, are responsible for my happiness. On the side of the proposition, we tell you, this shouldn't be the case. We think that ultimately, it should be women that are able to find happiness rather than have a narrative that says, the only way in which you are happy is if you have a child. Yes?
On our side, we say, yes, motherhood is rewarding, but you also can see that having a job is rewarding. This is the status quo we stand for. You see most women having both jobs and children. This is not mutually exclusive.
I think I understand your point, but the status quo that they're actually referring to, we think it's only found in the majority of developed nations. We tell you this conception that motherhood is the most rewarding thing is still very prevalent in continents such as Africa, Latin America, or for example, Southeast Asia. But what we tell you is that the status quo of European nations mostly, and some developed Asian nations, is that motherhood is not the most rewarding thing. That is why we have actually seen a shift from women actually going into work. That is why we see a shift from more women actually going to work, because we're starting to understand that motherhood is not the most important and rewarding thing in the world. Judges, at the end of the day, there are 3.5 billion women in today's world. There's so much people, so many diversity, from so many races and religions and nationalities. We should not impose a system which tells them what kind of lifestyle is more rewarding than another. We reject that. We think people should live their lives without any societal impositions. How to propose?
Speaking time was 8 minutes, 13 seconds. like to thank the third speaker of the proposition for their speech and would like to invite the third speaker of the opposition to deliver their speech.
A positive narrative towards having children is far more better, as it still can empower all women, and it doesn't exclude specific women and then start to harm them directly. We tell you that it's far better than having a negative narrative, which makes raising a child so complicated, which means that no mothers on their side of the house have zero motivation to be actually caring for these children, which means that on their side of the house, children are left excluded and feeling only as a burden. Notice that our side of the house doesn't have to tell you that we only stand for the fact that having children is the most rewarding thing women can do. We stand for the fact that having children is in fact rewarding, but it's as rewarding as, for example, investing in your career and etc. We think that women on our side of the house can have both a family and a proper job or an education. On their side of the house, the women who want to have children are simply left excluded. Extremely proud to stand inside
Point of
of
information.
No thanks. Right, in my speech, 2 clash points for you today. First, I'll talk about what is actually going to be better for women in the society, and in this I'll also integrate the points they talked about, like LGBT people and infertile women. Secondly, I'll talk about the most about regarding children, and on which side of the house the children are capable of being better off. First clash point about what's better for women and exclusive members of society. Let's take a look at what they say. We see mainly 2 things. First, they talk about how infertile women and single people are simply feeling excluded under the status quo. Secondly, they talk about how LGBT community feels excluded. How do we respond? We constantly told you that it's important to realize that they don't destroy the pressure to have children and don't manage to help these people. We tell you that notice that on their side of the house, the pressure to have children is still going to prevail. This happens because women are still going to feel as if they have the duty to bear children and this happens because they have the biological pressure, because unfortunately they are the ones who are capable of birthing children. This means that they never really provide you with any kind of mechanism on how women are suddenly going to stop feeling that pressure. We tell you that considering, for example, infertile women, these infertile women are going to feel not discriminated only in the case when there are going to be no children on their side of the house. We tell you that it's not going to happen because there are going to be children, because some women might still choose to have children, but it's going to be an extremely hard work for them to raise their children because they're going to feel as if it's not rewarding them. We tell that this means that on their side of the house, the point about infertile women is simply false. We also tell you that this means that people are simply going to constantly feel the pressure to have children on their side of the house. This means that they never fix that problem. But secondly, note that they never provide you analysis on how LGBT community won't feel excluded on their side of the house. Notice that women who are, for example, lesbians will still feel as if they have the biological pressure to bear kids. Notice that at this point, the members of LGBT community who are, for example, couples and who want to have children are still going to be feeling that pressure on their side of the house. They never provide you any kind of mechanism on how these LGBT people are not going to be suddenly exclusively benefited. We tell you their argument is simply false. But also, but then lately, no thanks. Regarding women's position in the society, what do we tell you? We tell that their side of the house is extremely counterproductive to women. This happens because women who want to seek for a career and have a family are simply going to be excluded. Notice that at this point, they never actually engage in raw material when we talked about working class women who, for example, have to work 2 jobs to cater for their families, but who still want to have their families, right? We tell you what will happen comparatively is that on our side of the house, you are constantly motivated and seen as a huge contribution to the society because you have the children. You know that, I'll take you in a minute, that no matter how hard you work, you are still going to understand that in the long term, it is extremely rewarding job, even if you spend those sleepless nights spent with your children. This means that on their side of the house, these women are going to be rewarded. This means that on their side of the house, these working class women who have too many jobs are simply going to be excluded. Go.
So society of the opposition think that women need to society constantly tells them to have children in order for them to understand its good, or in order for them to care for their children.
Look, what we told you is that on our side of the house, we stand for both things. We think that you can have children, and you can be seen as rewarding for that. But at the same time, you can be seen, we tell you that you can still have career. So yes, we kind of agree with that point. But we tell you that on our side of the house, these women are capable of having both. On their side of the house, these women are simply pushed into narrative that having the career is the most important thing. They're simply told that having children may not be as important. Right, moving on with the point. No thanks. We tell you that on their side of the house, the women who want to have children will be extremely disenfranchised. This means that there's still going to be pressure, that they're still going to constantly feel the pressure that having children is simply equal to a burden, because they're not going to see like any bright sides of what's so good about having children. Moreover, note that on their side of the house, once society recognizes that actually maybe having children doesn't require sacrifices, maybe it's actually pretty easy, this means that these women are going to be left with, for example, no maternity leaves. This means that they're going to be feeling extreme huge pressure in workplaces, for example. We believe it's unjustified. No thanks. We tell you that careerists on our side of the house, for example, regarding them, they're not forced to feel any kind of direct pressure. These careerists can still exist on our side of the house because we recognize that some women may not, for example, want to have children at all, right? But we tell you that on their side of the house, what they do is cause far more problems because specific people are left excluded. Second clash point regarding children and on which side of the house are going to be better off. They say that children in foster homes currently are neglected, and you talk about the fact that women who, for example, choose to have abortions are neglected. How do we respond? We told you that the women who choose abortion are still seen as legitimate. Notice that at this point, we already see movements in the society going for abortion, right? We notice that even in developing countries, which they love to talk about, we still these countries are becoming more liberal. This means that in some countries, abortion is becoming a more legitimate option. But notice that just because you change the narrative, they never explain to us how abortion is, for example, going to be seen as a better option on their side of the house. Because we think that changing a narrative is not going to change the problems. Therefore, they never provided you any clear mechanism on how they change that situation. Secondly, we tell you, regarding children in foster homes, comparatively, look at the fact that children on their side of the house in foster homes are going to feel far worse because they're going to feel as if they're burdened to society, because they're going to feel as if their mothers literally just, weren't even rewarded for them being born. This means that these children are going to be extremely disenfranchised from their side of the house. We tell it also, because people are short-sighted, they will not want to look into long-term benefits, and that's what we constantly told you. This means that women will, for example, prioritize the fact that, you will have to spend some sleepless nights and that it will be painful to raise a child, rather than the fact that actually in the long term, this is a child that is going to thank you on our side of the house. Notice that comparatively, on our side of the house, this woman is going to tell the child that maybe it was hard in the beginning to raise you, but still the long-term effect is far better because I'm now got a child. On their side of the house, this woman is simply not going to understand what is so good about having the children. This means that on their side of the house, these children are left excluded. As we proved to you that we're still capable of catering for all needs of women, as we proved to you that we do not leave specific groups disenfranchised, and as we proved to you that children are better off on our side of the house, extremely wrong to stand aside.
Speaking time was 8 minutes, 16 seconds. I would like to thank the third speaker of the opposition for their speech, and would like to invite the reply speaker of the opposition to deliver their speech.
The narrative that we have on opposition is that having a child is a happy experience. That the emotions that you will feel throughout your entire life will override all of the short-term harms that you will feel as a mother. The proposition we believe, therefore, had to stand for there being no rewards of motherhood. for motherhood being a burden because of the opportunity cost and because of the certain harms that you get when you have a child. However, we believe that the proposition was really unengaging with these characterizations. We believe that they completely twisted the motion by simply saying that they do not have to stand for motherhood being the most rewarding thing. We believe that they had to stand for women not wanting to be mothers. And they pushed this unfair burden throughout the entire debate on us to actually defend mothers, to actually defend women only wanting to be mothers and never choosing a career. Look, the side of opposition stood throughout the entire debate for women having a choice, for career being a rewarding option, and for motherhood also being a rewarding option. Very proud to propose. In my speech, I'm going to look at the two worlds that we saw in this debate. So firstly, the world that we saw in side proposition is the world where motherhood is perceived as not good. Firstly, they told us that you have to stand for motherhood not being treated as the most rewarding thing. We told you that this narrative no longer really exists because we see that women actually already a lot of times choose to have a career and not have a child, choose to have a child and a career or no career, right? We believe that women have a plethora of options under the status quo. But then they told us, no, this does not exist in the developing world. We believe that the problems that they describe in the developing world are actually other structural problems, like the fact there's a lack of contraception, lack of sexual education. That is the reason why there's so many children born to poverty, not the fact that there is a narrative that all women should be mothers. But then they told us that women who can't have children are detrimented by this narrative under the status quo. We told you that we stand for the utilitarian principle here. And we told you that we believe that the majority of women actually want to be mothers. And we believe that the kind of narrative that they will provide under their side will actually be very detrimental to these women because they will feel like they do not have a choice. Like the fact that they will have children will actually be very harmful to them and will leave them with a bad option. We believe that the kind of narrative that we have under our side is actually way easier to resist. Because you're given with the option, with the fact that your career can be rewarding, but that motherhood is also a very rewarding thing, while on their side, it is only seen as a bad thing. But then they further on told us that the LGBT community are detrimented under the status quo. We believe that the kind of narrative that they're standing for will also detriment the LGBT community. Because if you perceive motherhood as a generally bad thing, we believe that these LGBT couples and families will also be affected by this narrative, as having children will also be seen as something that will detriment. Look, we believe that under their side, we have a world where motherhood is neglected as something that provides certain burdens and that actually should be appreciated. Well, in our world, we believe that we empower women to have a choice, and we empower women to be mothers. And we told you firstly that motherhood is a very rewarding process. They never really provided any kind of negatives of motherhood on their side. So really, it is actually unclear why you have to see motherhood as a bad thing. Because we believe that under the status quo, you can be a mother and have a career. We believe they did not really prove to us, but it's actually necessary to push such a narrative. Then we told you that women actually lose certain benefits when you push this kind of narrative, such as benefits, such as employment benefits, such as benefits that the government is currently providing. They never really refuted or engaged with this point under their side. Now we told you that children will actually be detrimented. Because when you tell children that motherhood is not a rewarding process, that you are actually a burden to your parents to raise, we believe that these children will actually be feeling like burdens and will be basically neglected. We believe the side proposition was very uncomparative in this debate. We believe that we need this narrative because when you lose it, we believe that motherhood is undermined and that is very, very problematic for the majority of women in our society. Very proud to oppose it.
Speaking time was 4 minutes, 14 seconds. I would like to thank the reply speaker of the opposition for their speech and would like to invite the reply speaker for a short
You see, judges, team proposition does not regret the narrative the team opposition has taken in this debate. However, the main problem with their side is that they fail to understand the status quo we are living in. They fail to understand that the narrative that has been imposed in women is not that of you have the choice to work and be a mother, you have the choice of working, but rather the one that shames women that decide to abort, the one that shames women that cannot have babies, the ones that even just decide decide not to have a baby, that is what they had to defend and fail to throughout the round. In my speech, I'll present to you 2 points of clash. The first one, that of the narrative imposed, and the second one, that of marginalized groups. But now to my first point, that of the narrative imposed, right? Because in their first argument, they come and tell us, well, we're defending this utilitarian principle, and a lot of women want to have children. In the round, we question many things in this argument. The first one is whether it is actually the majority of women that wanted to have the children, or rather if it was in the developing world, women in Saudi Arabia, for example, that had no other choice and were forced to have these babies. We tell you in our first argument that we care about the minorities, and telling us we are taking a utilitarian stance is not enough for them to justify all the harms, all the shame that these women are feeling in the status quo. Furthermore, we tell you that when they say, we are with your side, we're shaming those that want to have women, we tell you no, that's not it. And this is where the big misconception they have in our case is so relevant for this case, right? Because since my first speech, we tell you that we're not against women having babies. We're actually for it if that is your choice. However, what we are against is the historical and present narrative that forces women to have children, because if not, they're giving up miracles. If not, they're not fulfilling this duty. We think they fail to respond to this. The only thing that they say is pressure will exist on both sides. My second speaker eloquently tells you how this pressure is not existent, how this pressure is in a societal level, but furthermore, when they tell us women are the only ones that can have a child and that is why they're pressured, my second speaker tells you that that is not it, because for people to have children, there is also a need of a man, and we still see that men aren't pressured to on having babies in the status quo. They tell us we give no response. We think that they didn't hear the response my second speaker gave you. They further on in this argument tell us, well, they will start aborting because they won't see the long-term benefits, and they will only focus on the sleepless nights. We tell you that that narrative is the one we are opposing, right? We're opposing the condescending narrative that women cannot choose whether to have babies and that will only focus on short-term benefits. They lastly tell us in their third argument that children will perceive themselves as a burden. We tell you this already happens in foster homes. When they accuse us of not having the comparative side, we tell you it is them that they are not seeing what they are defending. Lastly, when they don't refute our third argument, that of the children and the poverty cycle and how they already feel mistreated, that is when it becomes so problematic for them to say that, well, children will feel unwanted. Lastly, second point of clash, we tell you that when they talk about benefits, we tell you that benefits such as maternity leave are already only given to women that, first of all, even have the privilege of having a job, but secondly, only in developed nations. We also tell you that in a historical level, we have always pressured women on not having jobs. They didn't respond to that. Lastly, when we talk to you in our second argument of how you're marginalizing groups like the LGBTQ+ community and single fathers, we think that there is a lack of response on their side. At the end, we both agree that we want gender equality. However, they're sticking to the oppressive status quo. We're providing a change. Thank you.